Hey, Judge Andrew Napolitano here, and you are on Freedom Watch with my guest and good friend Juan Williams, Fox News political analyst, co-host of The Five, and author of the great book, We the People. You on The Five have been analyzing President-elect Trump's transition almost every day.
We have.
Any surprises, or is this what you expected?
Well, at first I thought, gosh, you know, it looks a little chaotic to me, but it seems to have smoothed out to some degree, and I have to give him the benefit of the doubt because, in all honesty, Judge, I don't think he knew he was going to win.
Right.
And so the whole transition team and, you know, that whole apparatus, that structure had to be put in place.
Do you think he's seriously considering Mitt Romney for Secretary of State, and if so, what do you see behind that?
I don't necessarily see it as serious. I have heard from lots of people who think that, in fact, Rudolph Giuliani, the former mayor of New York, has this, but that it's a dalliance that has to do with bringing in the establishment wing of the Republican Party, making them comfortable, letting them know that he is serious about building bridges.
Does he make Mitt Romney look ridiculous if he's giving requiring him to undergo 2 interviews for a job that's already been promised to somebody else? Or does he look like Ronald Reagan and big tent Republicanism, and I want to bring in my most prominent Republican critic and become his buddy again?
Well, you know, that would be a fraud, and that's you can only push that line so far without, in fact, embarrassing somebody and looking as if you're being vindictive, because remember, Romney called the man a fraud, said he's not as rich as... I mean, on and on. Romney was highly critical and almost cost him the state of Utah. So if that's the case, he's not playing a winning game with the Republican establishment.
Do you think that Donald Trump will govern the way he campaigned with a harshness and brutality that offended a lot of people for fear it would unleash other harsh and brutal behavior on the part of the public that would think it was now acceptable?
So normally you think of team of rivals, President Lincoln, Seward and the gang, or
right.
You think of President Obama bringing in Hillary Clinton.
Right.
Here it looks to me like more like team of radicals, because when I see Steve Bannon, of course, you know, famously of Breitbart, running all kinds of things about Jews and blacks and ugly women and all that, and you know, and then I see that, for example, Tom Price is named to run Health and Human Services to deconstruct Obamacare, and of course, I think going after Medicare, Social Security down the line. I think, gosh, he is governing as he ran in that regard. Now, you have someone like Reince Priebus, who is much more establishment Republican, looks like the adult at the table, and I question how much Reince Priebus can, in fact, rein in the president-elect.
Did you think that Trump was not the radical vis-a-vis the establishment and elites that he claimed to be during the campaign, or do you think he
Well, I mean, a lot of that has to be balderdash. I mean, the guy lives in Fifth Avenue and, you know, is a billionaire according to his measure, but, I mean, clearly a part of the establishment and the elite. But he was able to pick up on a populist theme and to appeal, I think, to blue-collar America in a way that surprised me. It's effective, especially if you get up to states like Michigan and Wisconsin.
Do you think he picked up on a populist team earlier this week when he condemned flag burning in such a manner as to offend the First Amendment and to offend the concept of citizenship by suggesting someone could, quote, lose their citizenship for burning an American flag?
So this is where I am so pleased to be able to sit next to you as my Fox colleague, because I think that you are honest and say, you know what, this is not America
right.
as we know it.
Right.
You cannot have the President of the United States suggesting that you would deny someone citizenship or put them in jail for exercising their First Amendment rights, Judge. This, to me, is contrary to everything I understand about what it means to be an American.
So I have discussed this with a lot of people this week, as I know you have, and even if he didn't mean it literally, right. Even if this was just his Trumpian way of saying flag burning is wrong, I think there's an issue here because it gives quarter to others who would intimidate, shame, and try and prevent people from expressing their political views, whether that expression is burning a flag that you own or some other means of a protected speech.
Or protest.
Yes!
People who would protest, people who would say, I disagree, or I have a problem with my country's policy. Suddenly they are seen as the outsider, the other, worthy of being demonized rather than seen as part of the American family and a necessary part of democracy, which is part and parcel of disagreement, conversation, and vigorous debate.
Do you remember or recall from history an American president so intemperately threatening basic First Amendment rights?
Well, people cite to me Lincoln. And
well, put aside the Civil War. That's a sui generis situation.
Correct. That's what I would say.
Outside of that.
Well, you're on the same page I'm on. No, I cannot. And the thing that shocks me is here, you know, so many of my conservative friends want to go back to I think, no, my gosh, Ronald Reagan? Absolutely not.
Right.
Absolutely not.
Right.
I mean, you go back and you start thinking, well, who was it that would have done this? You say Richard Nixon. Well, he tried to break the law. We know about Watergate. But Nixon was never suggesting anything like that. But my concern, to speak to your point, is this does unleash an element in American life of people who say, so I'm angry or I feel aggrieved in some way or I don't like Muslims or I can't stand that free press. That Judge Napolitano, his tongue gets the better of him some days. All of a sudden, oh, yeah, well, you know what? We're going to change the libel laws, the First Amendment protections of the press, so that he can go after you more effectively.
I hear your warning, and I share it, Juan, and you know that because we've talked about this so many times. And as much as I love you, I hope you're wrong, but these are legitimate fears that people need to be wary of. I would remind the president that his favorite, now deceased, Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia was with the majority in those two cases that upheld flag burning. He said, if I were king, I would put flag burners in jail. But I'm not king. In America, we don't have a king. In America, the Constitution is the king. And the Constitution says you can express whatever political opinion you want. End of story.
So let me say here very quickly that as an American, black American, the concerns that people voice are oftentimes diminished about Trump. Oh, what? Trump's not racist. Trump doesn't have any concern here. But when you see these violations in terms of someone who would want to protest flag burning, think about the attitudes then towards people who might not be, one, Trump supporters, or might not be people who identify themselves with the populist impulse, and you say, oh, why do you guys feel uptight and fearful going into a Trump administration? And I think this gives you a window into those anxieties.
Yes, and I appreciate you giving that window to everybody watching us now. Juan, it's always a pleasure.
Judge, thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, my friend. From New York, defending freedom, whenever they let me, Judge Napolitano here. See you next time, America.